Hey, Nerd Herd, Dynasty Nerds here, back again. This week we're talking about the AFC South. Is now the time to sell Derrick Henry in Dynasty Fantasy Football?
Is Carson Wentz's foot injury contagious?
Gosh, I hope not. I have a lot of feelings about Travis Etienne, though.
Oh, and we're talking about the Houston Texans.
Oh, yay.
It's not going to be a lot of good stuff.
Ready, set, hut. Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
And welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Dotson, here with my fellow host, Matt O'Hara.
Hey.
And Garrett Price.
How's it going?
Oh, it's going so good. We're back talking Dynasty
What?
Fantasy Football because it's Dynasty Summer.
Holler.
Nailed it.
Got it. Yeah.
We didn't even plan that. That was amazing.
Yeah.
I couldn't even get in. Like I saw you guys harmonizing. I was like, do it.
It's called chemistry.
I love science.
Science.
We're only a couple weeks away for the Midwest
Whoa.
Expo.
Wax on, wax off.
In Canton, Ohio. If you haven't got your tickets yet, go to fantasyexpo.com. We'll be there.
Tickets.
Yeah. Talk about what I love, son.
Jeez.
Of course I do. Come meet me in person at Expo. See how creepy I really am.
He messes up just as many words in person.
Oh, all the time. I'm a habitual word messer upper. Yeah.
Giving away those shirts you guys got on.
Yeah, see this shirt? This is a new one. We're going to be giving away Dynasty Nerds shirts at the Expo.
Twinsies.
You said these are heather red, right?
Ooh, yeah, just the way I like it. Heather.
Salmon.
It's
Salmon.
it's a dark pink or light red. I don't know what. I've never understood why they call colors heather this, heather that. Like, isn't that a heather
Heather
shade
Locklear
of something?
Yeah.
Or heather gray. Maybe you have heather gray in
Maybe.
I just don't understand what the heather is.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Look it up, Jared.
All right, look it up, Jared.
Also at the Expo, down we're giving away nerd shirts. We're giving away a Yeti cooler.
What?
Yeah, you can win a whole big Yeti cooler. We got stickers.
Can I win?
Those are nice stickers
You're
we ordered,
ineligible.
too.
You can't be working for the site, unfortunately. Yeah.
Those are nice stickers.
Well, they're very nice vinyl stickers. I think we're going to start selling them on the website. Like,
Yeah.
3-pack for like $5 or something.
We
So
have
when you're
to.
buying that shirt, when you're buying this heather red shirt, it looks sexy as hell, even though it's not on the site to buy.
Well, we're
Heather.
giving them away at the depot.
Yeah,
All
these
right.
are limited editions to the depot.
Wait, Jared's got breaking news.
Heather is blended fibers combined to create a multicolored effect. Heather refers to a color effect created by mixing two or more different colored
I do
fibers
see
or yarns.
a darker red and then a white, perhaps,
That makes
mixed
sense.
in there.
So this
Okay.
would be a heather red because there's like a grayish,
yeah.
purplish thread in here.
Yeah.
Now we know.
Now we know what it means.
No one's half the
The
battle.
more you know.
Well done, sir. Thank
So
you.
before we get into the what are we doing? AFC South.
South. Yep.
This show is brought to you by our friends at DynastyDepot.com. Get to DynastyDepot.com right now and use that promo code NERDS. DynastyDepot.com, promo code NERDS. Why? Because you're running out of time for an opportunity to put yourself in position to buy and sell FFPC Dynasty teams like you're on eBay. This is it. You want to sell for profit? You want to buy teams for a bargain? Dynasty Depot provides that for you. Get to DynastyDepot.com right now. Use that promo code NERDS, and you can get their yearly subscription knocked down to $14.99 per year. And you don't have to do that to look at the teams. So it's not like you have to pay $14.99 and they're like, oh, man, I want to buy any of these scrub teams. Nope. You can look at the scrub teams first or the fantastic teams first and then pay the $14.99 for the whole year. And they're going to put you in a really good position to buy some really good Dynasty teams or put you in this position to draft really, really well and sell those teams for profit. And then you can flip Dynasty teams for profit. It's a great opportunity. You're also in position to win some really good prizes, such as an opportunity to play in the FFPC Championship for a grand prize of, Matt, $500,000. Yep, that's what you can do. We're really in sync today.
I had that momentary blank.
Calm down, Lance Bass.
You love it when we call on you randomly like that. That's
I
your
had this
favorite.
momentary blankness, but I knew it was 500,000.
It's like every intro.
Yep.
So get out there, DynastyDepot.com. Check them out. See what they're all about. I promise, if you love Dynasty Fantasy Football, you're going to love DynastyDepot.com. Use that promo code NERDS. So, fellas, let's get right into it. Let's talk about some stuff. And stuff, I mean AFC South. All right? First team on the list is the Tennessee Titans, quarterback by Ryan Tannehill, backed up by Logan Woodside. At running backs, King Henry, Derrick Henry himself, Darrington M. Evans, and Jeremy Nichols. At wide receiver, Julio Jones, A.J. Brown, Josh Reynolds, Des Fitzpatrick. At tight end, they have Anthony Ferkser, Jeff Swaim, Jaron Pinkney, and Luke Stocker. So, start off the top with the quarterback position. We have Ryan Tannehill coming off back-to-back top 8 fantasy football finishes with a tremendous offensive line. And they've run so far a very efficient offense out there in Tennessee. Obviously, Arthur Smith leaves as offensive coordinator, and he heads to the Atlanta Falcons, which we'll be talking about on our Nerd Herd Show episode next, to become their head coach. Now, and he did all of this. So Ryan Tannehill's coming off these back-to-back top 8 finishes, despite the Titans finishing in the bottom 3 in pass attempts, where they only average 30.1 attempts per game, and run the ball slightly more than passing the ball. They actually ran the ball 50.3% over passing. So they do that, and now on top of that, they add in future Hall of Famer Julio Jones. So Tannehill has taken his offense and got it moving. He's averaging, that offense, besides the pass attempts, has averaged 30.6 points per game. So it's been very friendly to offensive fantasy football players. Obviously, Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill, a wide receiver 1, and of course, A.J. Brown, a wide receiver 1. They bring in a new offensive coordinator this year, Todd Downing, who was their tight ends coach, and he hasn't called plays since 2017, which was his only year where he called plays, when he was the Raiders OC. But it's rumored that he's going to run the same system as Arthur Smith, which makes sense. In-house promotion.
In-house promotion. I was getting caught on the ands.
So Ryan Tannehill, I mean, we've talked about Ryan Tannehill now for a couple of years on this podcast as probably one of the better values out there today, whether it be Superflex or 1QB leagues. In a 1QB league, probably the best value when you're going for trades is going to be a guy like Ryan Tannehill. Mm-hmm. Not the biggest name, but a big-time producer. And again, now they add Julio Jones. So I don't feel like we have to get in depth. Have you guys, for Ryan Tannehill, has your opinion changed at all with the Julio addition? Do you still feel like, okay, they're bringing Julio, I still view him as right around quarterback 8 overall? Or have you simmered down now because they lost Arthur Smith?
No, I mean, I think, you lose Arthur Smith, so there's going to be some change, I think, in the calls that they're making. And every play caller is going to have their own style. So the plays are going to be the same. We have no idea exactly what this person's style is going to be like that's coming in as the OC until the games start playing out. But, obviously you're replacing Julio Jones, you're replacing Corey Davis with Julio Jones. So I think that's an upgrade in and of itself. So I don't see this as a downgrade at all. If anything, I think his weapons just got better, and I think we'll have to see exactly how the offensive coordinator kind of plays out the game plans week to week. But I don't see a dip in his production.
He ran the ball with the Raiders a lot, too.
Yeah. So I think they're going to stick with the plan. I think that's coming from the head coach. Like, these are the things we want to do. We want to establish the run. We want to, use the play action pass. So go forward with that.
Yeah, I think the offense still runs through Derrick Henry no matter what, but they're still going to throw the ball quite a bit. He was quarterback 7 last year overall in the season, and that was with Deshaun Watson finishing in front of him, which right now it looks like he's not going to be playing anytime soon.
But he's going to have Baker finish in front of him, so it's a big
evens out.
Offset.
That makes sense. Quarterback 1, Baker Mayfield. So, if anything, I think there's a real chance he could finish higher. Obviously, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, one of those guys could jump him. So we're probably looking at a very similar finish, and that's fantastic.
Yep.
Like, that's exactly what you want.
It's
championship caliber.
It's those young bucks that always are going to keep kind of Ryan Tannehill's his market depressed a little bit, and which is going to keep him as a value going forward for the next few years, because there's always these young bucks that people are trying to push up above him, and he seems to always kind of either tread water or stay, or stay above those guys.
He's a great quarterback to acquire with a plus for some of those types of guys. If you're going to say, like, okay, you get Russell Wilson, I'll get Ryan Tannehill plus something, or you're getting, some of these.
You're not taking a huge step back from a statistical standpoint or from a fantasy standpoint, and then you're getting something on top.
Then you're getting something on top. And even if you want to give up a even higher end guy than Russell Wilson, you're going to get a pretty nice plus back, even though the difference in points per game over the next 3 or 4 seasons probably won't be that significant.
Yeah, he's got paid, so he's there for another 2 more years, and don't rule out that they don't extend him again as he nears closer to that contract ending, as much maybe as soon as next year, the 2022 season. Obviously, Ryan Tannehill's throwing the football to A.J. Brown. He finished as wide receiver 12 last year in 14 games, but his 17.7 points per game was actually good for 6th best overall amongst fantasy football receivers. And he's coming off back-to-back seasons over 1,000 yards, as his total 19 touchdowns in his first 2 years in the league. But despite, like we mentioned, doing all of this, Tennessee has not thrown the ball a ton there. They're one of the lowest team in NFL throwing the football. He's only had double-digit targets twice in 2 years. So despite all of that, he's still producing at a high level.
And he makes big plays, too. That's A.J. Brown. In a nutshell, Ryan Tannehill will throw him a 15-yard pass, and then he'll break, another 30, 40-yard runs and yards after the catch and go into the end zone with it. That's kind of how he does it. So.
How many receivers are you taking over A.J. Brown right now in Dynasty Fantasy Football?
There's not many. I mean, he even revealed after the season on Instagram, like he was a little drugged up, it seemed like, but he had to get surgeries on both knees. Like he played all season on both of his knees not being right. So, I mean, there's a potential that he could be even more explosive, which is wild to think of. But if I'm being honest, I'm taking Tyreek Hill over him.
Devontae Adams?
I don't think I would at this point. I think I would take A.J. Brown ahead of him.
Justin Jefferson?
He lives in that tier with Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb. Like he lives right there for me. It depends on the day, but as of right, and I'll have to go look where I have him ranked. I would consider him maybe my wide receiver too.
Yeah, I'm taking Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb over him easily. Okay, easily makes it sound bad. I'm 10 out of 10 times I would take them over him every time. Like it would never switch. Devontae Adams and A.J. Brown, I'd probably flip-flop here and there on the two.
You have the age. You're probably getting better production this year out of Adams, but you're also probably 5 years older.
Next year, yeah. And then, of course, Tyreek Hill for me too. But, Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb right now are my dynasty. Obviously, after Tyreek Hill are my dynasty darlings. Sure. I actually moved them up in my rankings both.
So would you have Brown more like 5th, 6th?
Right around there. Yeah, I think I'd go Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson in that order. Then probably Devontae Adams, then A.J. Brown.
You're talking about in a startup, you would go in that
startup,
order? Yeah. And that's the difficult thing. I mean, we have rankings, and then there's like there almost needs to be a separate set of like startup rankings. You know what I mean? Because the way you look at it, the way you do rankings is very difficult because you have to try to figure out. You have to kind of balance people that are in a season right now and people that are doing a startup, and it's kind of difficult. Obviously, when I'm doing a startup, I'd like to go younger more so. Sure. So I would probably have a guy like A.J. Brown ahead of Devontae Adams.
But you would rank Devontae Adams ahead of A.J.
Devontae
Brown.
Adams is probably ranked above him in my rankings.
You're right. You're right. That is it actually is not a bad idea. You should have 2 different rank sets, like startup ranks and then overall dynasty ranks.
Yeah.
Because you're right. It's a different like how you would want to approach a startup compared to just overall ranking a player in fantasy football or even dynasty fantasy football, because
that's what makes doing rankings difficult, and also having these conversations.
I've always approached my rankings as, if I'm in a startup, who am I taking above this player?
Me too.
I always look at it that way. Like in a startup, which way am I going? And hence why after this year being a startup, like I just moved CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson significantly up, because even though Tyreek Hill is the 1-1 for sure at wide receiver, I almost would still then rather have Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb, because they're 22, right? So I can get them for 4 more years after Tyreek Hill. Right. And it's tough because I really love those 2 receivers a ton. I know somebody asked me on Twitter and they said, hey, who's the wide receiver 1 in 3 years overall in a startup? I'm like, it's CeeDee Lamb. And I said that before all this training camp videos started coming out. So pretty interesting there, but we're talking about A.J. Brown here. Again, who is a very high caliber receiver.
We go off on tangents sometimes.
We do sometimes. It happens. So, yeah, I mean, he goes there. Now they're bringing a guy like Julio Jones. Julio Jones only played in 7 full games last year, but was a high-end wide receiver too on his average. His pace for the full season was over 90 receptions and about 1,400 yards.
And one touchdown maybe?
Probably around there. I think probably equates about 3.
Yeah, he averages about 1 or 2 a year.
And the team, after losing Corey Davis, Adam Humphries, Jonnu Smith, they average about 19 targets vacated by the team for Julio Jones this year. I know they're bringing a guy like Josh Reynolds, who's a very solid wide receiver 3. But so say you give maybe like 5 targets of that, Julio can still see about 13 targets per game here and still put up really good numbers.
Just to go full circle, I actually do have AJ Brown as my number 2 ranked on Dynasty Nerds as well. So it's like I thought I had him that high, but I wanted to double check. Yep, he is my number 2. And one guy we forgot in that mix as well is Stephon Diggs is a tough one to rank in that mix as well.
Yeah, it is tough.
He's tough.
He's right there. Like he's right there too in that same. That's why people do tiers, because some people just want to like. Some people want the easy way out. So like, I'm just doing tiers, so you can take them any way you want them, which is fair. But not me, because if you're on the clock, you're taking somebody. Who are you taking?
You do have to take someone.
I would probably take A.J. Brown over Stephon Diggs.
So would I.
I think I have it ranked that way, so I definitely would.
And then I'd probably, like, after the season was over, it's like, why did I take A.J. Brown over Stephon Diggs? Stephon Diggs, here he is again, wide receiver 2 overall. Look at me. Silly, but okay.
Well, we know Matt loves Stephon Diggs, so he's probably taking Stephon Diggs.
Well, we were right. We were right.
Guys got me on that one. What are you going to do?
Do you think Julio Jones here in this offense, you think he's still, what do you think? Wide receiver 2 finish?
Yeah, I think on a points per game basis, he might even creep up close to a wide receiver 1, but you just have to pencil in knowing that he's going to miss somewhere between 2 to 6 games over the course of the season, and that's just what he's done every year for the past 4 years.
I know, but maybe the air in Nashville is different.
Maybe it is. Maybe
it get hot.
It could be
a little cooler.
It could be very different, but at this point, I'm kind of baking that into my rankings with him, just knowing that that's kind of where his body's at this point.
Oh, what are you baking?
I like to break bread.
I'm baking bacon.
On a George Foreman?
That actually is a good way to prepare bacon in the oven, baking it.
Do you like to do it in the oven is great.
Yeah.
You sprinkle a little brown sugar on it, and you put some syrup on it.
Wow,
put it in the oven.
You're really doing
You're making
it.
candy?
Oh, it's delicious. You've never done it that way? You got to get the thick cut bacon.
I was going to say, I do the real thick cut.
Yeah,
I do
thick cut.
425 for about 20 minutes in the oven. Boom.
Yeah, sprinkle a little bit of brown sugar.
I like mine real crispy. So,
well, where would you take Julio Jones?
Guy.
oh yeah, we're back.
This is cooking with the nerds.
Come on.
Look, like, do you
just
think,
bought a smoker too.
Do you think as a contender, what price tag are we paying for Julio Jones right now in Dynasty Fantasy Football? Would you, as a contender, even consider giving up a late first if you need wide receiver help for Julio Jones?
Yeah, that's real on the border for me. And it's because of availability that I'm concerned. I mean, if I knew that he was going to be there for 16 games, I'd definitely do that. But I don't know if he's going to be there when I most need him. So I feel a little bit uncomfortable giving a first. But I think that's the price. I think you would have to.
I know last year, as I was pushing for a playoff push to win a league that I ended up coming second in, I gave up a 2023 first for Julio Jones and Zach Ertz at the time.
So you got a little extra juice on top.
Little,
I would feel better getting another guy that can help me along with that first. If I could do something similar to that, obviously not as Zach Ertz.
And that was the playoff deadline, and I needed a tight end at the time, and I figured Zach Ertz would get traded this offseason, so he was kind of some depth for me.
I think I would rather go after, we mentioned like Robert Woods last episode, if he's available. If not, maybe like Adam Thielen. He's been a little bit more available over the course of his career too. Mm-hmm. I think I'd rather gamble on one of those kind of guys before Julio, just because I need him for the playoffs and I don't know if he's going to be there.
But if Julio's there, he's the far and away better option. No,
I mean, Adam Thielen was what, wide receiver 4-5 last season?
Was he that high?
I thought he was like wide receiver 6.
He was a wide receiver 1 last year.
He was that high? Oh gosh.
No, Justin Jefferson was wide receiver 6 last year.
Let me look, because they were both pretty high. Let me see.
I mean, it depends. I mean, he falls in that category.
10. He was wide receiver 10.
So wide receiver 10. So, but he falls in that category. But I think Thielen's shelf life is literally just as long as Julio's.
For sure. He just hasn't been as banged up.
I mean, Robert Woods is a clear choice. But
if you can get Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp.
You might even be able to dabble like Tyler Lockett in that price range.
He'd probably be in a similar price range.
Tyler Lockett's
a
little too up and down for me week to week. I think I would rather go with a guy like Thielen. If he was, I didn't realize he was wide receiver 1 last year. I thought he was in wide receiver 2
it will be interesting to see if he can sustain that because he did have a career high in touchdowns last year.
That's right.
So that is the one little bit of an oddity about it. But Olabisi Johnson just got hurt and tore his ACL. So Amir Smith-Marset.
Go ahead.
Succotash is doing pretty sweet.
Yeah, he looks good. He's a guy I'm excited about.
Saw a video of him this morning running a really crisp route and then getting open for a touchdown.
Yep, a lot of these young receivers are looking really good.
Yeah, it's crazy how this league is getting taken over by storm by some really efficient receivers.
Yep.
Even at like Browns camp, Donovan Peoples-Jones is the hot name there, and how good he is looking there with his routes getting cleaned up and the chemistry of him and Baker has.
All you got to do is get out of Michigan. That's all you got to do.
That's all I got to do.
Get off the line for him. He was the guy that couldn't get off the line in college. He had that weird little stutter step, and they kind of got that out of him. So.
Last guy in Tennessee here we want to talk about is Derrick Henry, the king Derrick Henry. He's been an absolute monster going over 2,000 yards each of the past 2 seasons with 2,213 yards in 2019 and 2,192 yards in 2020, despite facing the most 8-man boxes in the NFL. Henry averaged 5.2 yards per carry last year, finishes running back number 3 overall, and he finishes running back 5 in 2019. Now, a ton of carries. He had over 400 each of the last 2 seasons with a total of 827 carries. Will that finally...
Is that carries or total touches?
Touches. Will that finally catch up to him this year? Because this is a guy also that's been blessed not to be hurt at all, which is crazy at the running back position and amount of carries he's been getting. Or does the addition of Julio Jones open things up even more for Derrick Henry? He's 27 years old, so he's about to hit a 28-year-old threshold of when you want to sell. What are you doing with Derrick Henry? Like, obviously, if you're a contender, you got to hold on to him. But what are you doing, Derrick Henry, if you're maybe, like, not for sure contender, but you might be able to win. But he's the guy that could
maybe put you over the top.
He might be the guy, like, you need him to win for sure, but it's still a question mark.
I have never, before this season, been willing to acquire Derrick Henry. One, because early on in his career, I didn't really believe in him. And then the price tag was just so ungodly high. The price tag, because of those, the high carry workload, although he didn't have a lot early in his career, which kind of helps balance that a little bit. But I think the age at 27 is starting to make people a little worried, understandably so as well.
He went in the 3rd round in that startup, I mean.
I've actually, for the first time ever, actually acquired him in some places. You mentioned the UDPL league earlier. I traded David Montgomery, and I'd have to go back and look, but it was like a good tight, like a good up and coming tight. I think it was Adam Troutman. I think it was David Montgomery, Adam Troutman, and a 3rd for Derrick Henry. And
that's pretty good value.
I felt good about that.
I feel really good about that.
I would feel good. I would feel good there.
Now, I'd have to go back and check the exact details, but I remember seeing it, and I was like, that was offered to me. Okay. And I didn't go searching for Derrick Henry, but it was offered to me, and I was like, that's just too good a value. So I think there are some people getting scared off.
Was that Izzy?
No, it was Tyler.
Oh,
Tyler's the serial trader in the league.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
I get a trade offer from him every week. I gotta love that guy.
I can't wait to beat him.
Yeah, he's a good dude. So anyway.
You buying Derrick Henry? I'm not.
No. I feel like I wasn't a believer to begin with. He did these 2 amazing back-to-back years, but the wheels are going to fall off, in my opinion, and it's going to be a pretty steep drop-off. And you might get this year out of him, but I'm not sure you're going to get much more after that.
I mean, just literally a couple of years ago, he's averaging 66 yards per game.
It's true.
You look at the history of guys that have taken on the workload that he's taken on this past 2 years, and it gets ugly pretty quick for him. So,
I will say most guys also aren't built like Derrick Henry, though. 6'3", 247. I mean, that's just most guys we're talking about 5'10", 215.
With an ability to maybe miss some of those blows. He's a big person, easy to hit. You know what I mean?
My favorite move if I'm a Derrick Henry mover, is my first attack is trying to acquire Najee Harris, and then I want Travis Etienne. Those are like, obviously you guys.
If you're also a contender, right?
Yeah, if I'm a contender.
Okay.
I'm trying to acquire Najee Harris. That's who I would want to. That's who I would want to get is Najee Harris.
Hitting the reset button on
Just
that.
hit the reset button on the years, and I would do that. I mean, I'm essentially trading in my eyes. I know it's not your 1-1, but I'm trading Derrick Henry for the 1-1. I'm acquiring another big back that has really good hands and will offer more upside. That still has that potential to finish as running back 3 on PPR. That's the thing. Derrick Henry took 2,000 yards to become wide receiver 3 and wide receiver 5. Why? Because he's not viable in the passing game, and that's the difference of those PPR running backs. Sure. So, like you said, when that wheel falls off and the rushing yards, the wheels fall off completely, and you're just stuck. So he's a perfect back to get out of right now. 2 back-to-back big-time years, and just don't even you're not even doing yourself a disservice. You're just getting younger, right? And you're going to maintain, and the points drop off a little bit. You're going to maintain those points for much longer. So I'm selling Derrick Henry as well. We have to move on. Indianapolis Colts are up. Quarterback, maybe Carson Wentz, Jacob Eason, Sam Ehlinger out of Texas. Running backs, Jonathan Taylor, Marlon Mack, Nyheim Hines, Jordan Wilkins. At wide receiver, we have Michael Pittman Jr., Paris Campbell, T.Y. Hilton, Ashton Doolin from your alma mater, Zach Pascal, J.J. Nelson, Desmond Patton. At tight end, Mo Alley Cox, Jack Doyle, and Kyle Granson. So, of course, the hot news here is Carson Wentz is hurt again with a foot injury. That will probably sideline him 6 to 12 weeks. He's been hurt every year of his life. It seems, and it would not surprise me if Carson Wentz came out of the womb hurt. The doctor's you got a sprained shoulder.
So I have been following this story, but probably not close enough. He got a bone removed?
Yeah, so
question mark?
From what it sounds like, this was actually an old injury that happened. They're talking about maybe back in college even, where this injury occurred. And yeah, this bone has kind of been festering's not the right word, but it's becoming more problematic over the years. And yeah, they're going to have to get, I think, a part of it removed. And then literally the next day, Quentin Nelson has to do the same thing.
Contagious.
The fact that the exact same injury, which is, to my knowledge, I'm no expert. Maybe we need to talk to Matthew Betts or something. But
sure.
I don't think this is a common injury. It's kind of a fluke thing.
I feel like we were born with a certain amount of bones and we should have them all for our whole life. Why are people getting bones removed?
You're trying to give bones.
I'm no medical expert, but it is odd to say the least. So best case scenario for Carson Wentz, he misses a game, 2 games. Worst case scenario, we're looking at half the season.
And right, that's the timeline. It's between one game and 7 or 8 games. Right?
But with all great tragedies comes great opportunity. If you're in a Superflex league and you got Jacob Eason, sell.
Yep, I'm absolutely selling. This is the only time he's going to have any sort of real value. It's going to be Carson Wentz's job when he comes back. If something were to go haywire, I still don't think Jacob Eason is a good enough quarterback to say, hey, we have all the other places here in place in Indianapolis. All we needed was the quarterback. You're the guy, Jacob Eason.
You're it. Let's do it.
They would be the type of team, if it doesn't work out with Wentz, to go after a Jimmy G or to try to figure out a way to get Deshaun Watson there, even though he's in the same division, or draft the top guy and trade up for. That's really all. This is a very good defense. This is a young and up-and-coming receiving core, an amazing offensive line with one of the most dynamic young running backs in football. This team is ready.
But even now, Jacob Eason's going to be in a situation which is again why you want to sell, because in Superflex league, any kind of starting quarterback holds value for any kind of amount of time. So he's actually holding value here. If I can flip Jacob Eason for the best pick I can get is what I see him as a high 2023 second-round pick. I am making that move immediately, because you mentioned a tremendous offensive line, but Quentin Nelson is now out for the same amount of time, who is your all-pro left guard.
He is the best offensive lineman in football.
Yep.
And you have to remember, they all of a sudden, surprisingly, lost their great left tackle in Anthony Costanzo, who retired. And what did? They went and got a low-end tier
Eric Fisher.
left tackle. Eric Fisher's coming off an Achilles injury, which he might even be able to start the season as well. And honestly, if you look at PFF grades on Eric Fisher the last couple of years, he has not been that good. There's a reason Kansas City wasn't waiting out for Eric Fisher.
He was a number 1 overall pick that really was a bust for the most of his career, or maybe year 4 or 5, he started kind of coming around and being a guy that they could rely on, and then he got injured. So, yeah.
If you have Jacob Eason, and obviously now is probably not the perfect time to do this, but as we start getting a little bit closer and it becomes more clear that he's going to start some games, now is the time to sell because Jacob Eason is not the quarterback of the future. They will either have Carson Wentz come back and have success, or they will move on and sign a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo, trade for Deshaun Watson, or again, trade up in a draft and draft a quarterback.
And
they will make a move.
And you can't even rule out the fact that he's going to have long-term value even into the season because a guy like Phillip Rivers is already kind of indicating out there right now that, hey, I might be, I might not be as retired as I sound.
He's coaching a high school football team. That poor team just be like, hey, sorry, guys, I'm not your coach anymore. I'm going to go play football.
No, he said late in the season.
Yeah,
so
he said like
after
December, January.
For the playoff
Colts don't need him then.
That's what he's saying now. The day that Carson Wentz gets a bone removed from his foot, what is it going to be 2 days from now? That's a money grab. You know what I mean? Like I might be available in December unless
my kids got to eat.
Unless you pay me more right now, and then I'll come to training camp right now.
Somebody put a great tweet on there. It was like all it took was one off season. We're going to report to camp and stay home with 9 full children. And he's already like, I'm gonna come back.
I'm back.
Oh, that'd be me. That'd be me for sure. But get me out of here. So. Yeah, so that offensive line is a little bit of worrisome for a guy like Jacob Eason. Unproven talent at wide receiver. Even though I like both of the wide receivers there, I know T.Y. Hilton's a proven vet, but for Jacob Eason, that will be somewhat of a worry. So now with the offensive line, does that hurt a guy like Jonathan Taylor? Because going back to Carson Wentz, I mean, if he comes back, he's going to be paired with Frank Wright. That's all great. That's hunky-dory. We've talked about this many times on the podcast. You go back and listen to it. He had his best year under Frank Wright. But the Colts backfield had the second most touches per game last year in the NFL. They averaged 32.7 per game. And that's why Jonathan Taylor is such a dynasty darling. But the left side of that line now is extremely damaged. Which I thought I saw on Twitter today, some people saw in startups that they already saw a little bit of Jonathan Taylor regression a little bit. Do you think Jonathan Taylor, who finished as running back 6 overall last year in 15 games, again, who's a dynasty darling, do you use this small window of opportunity? Because remember, the game of dynasty is as bad as injuries are to player. All that does is open windows of opportunity to either buy that player or buy other players that affects. Injuries are the best time to make dynasty moves, whether it's selling or buying. Is this the time now to go out and buy Jonathan Taylor if you can get him for, say, 2 first-round picks?
If the price has dropped at all, absolutely. My guess is most Jonathan Taylor owners are somebody like me, somebody that really believed in Jonathan Taylor, really liked Jonathan Taylor, has been excited about him all offseason, and is like, seriously, thanks a lot, Carson Wentz and all-pro Quentin Nelson. But if you're trying to get him from me, I'm not giving you any sort of discount. You still have to pay full price. So it probably opened up a buying window for you to actually get him, but the price hasn't dropped at all, most likely. You're still having to pay full price in order to get him. I think where this hurts is redraft leagues. Like if I was in a redraft startup, I would be a little more like, I don't know when those guys are coming back. That might be upwards of half of my season, but I don't think he's really lost any dynasty value.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't think he has either.
I don't think he has either. I think in dynasty he should be holding pretty true. What I'm interested to see is without those 2 guys in front of him on the left hand side, is he the same guy? You know what I mean? And because obviously last year early on he was a guy that he wasn't hitting the holes. He wasn't hitting all the right spots. He looked a little frozen at times.
Tentative, yep.
Yeah, a little tentative. That's the word I was looking for. So, without those 2 really good offensive linemen in front of him, let's just see how the beginning of the season goes because it could be very telling. I mean, if he's a guy that only performs really, really well when he's got big holes like he did in college and towards the end of the year when things were clicking, then at least it throws up a little red flag in the back of my mind. I still don't think he's a bad running back by any means, but I think at least I know then that he's very dependent on the guys in front of him to have fantasy value.
Which we remember last year he did start off kind of slow. Remember he was in the wrong holes. It was the second half of the season where he really blew up and took off. and became the elite running back he is. And with these windows and how fickle that position can be,
Sure.
Maybe this is an opportunity just to say, yeah, what can I do? Maybe it's an opportunity to explore, because what happened, like Matt said, if we find out that he can't operate without this talent around him, then the price tag drops. But at the same time, I still think you have a really good dynasty running back, so it's a win-win situation.
It's one of those things I'm just keeping an eye on. I'm just kind of making a mental checklist of the thing of my player.
Just watching the first 3 games.
Exactly.
And
we'll monitor it here. We'll talk about it on the
absolutely.
podcast. And of course, a podcast. I did a YouTube video. Make sure you go check that out on Nyheim Hines.
Yep.
About 4 months ago. It's called "Which Running Back You Need to Buy Now." Check that out on our Dynasty Nerds YouTube channel. While you're there, make sure you like. Make sure you subscribe. But Nyheim Hines to me was one of the great running back buys, because Nyheim Hines is a great flex option. This is a guy who finishes running back 15 overall last year in PPR leagues, leading the Colts in receptions. He had 63, third most amongst all running backs in the NFL. But what I really liked about Hines as well is he showed the ability to carry between the tackles last year when called upon, like he did in the playoffs. He averaged 4.8 yards per carry, which everybody just automatically assumes Nyheim Hines is that he's just a small, diminutive pass catcher running back. But he was able to show that he has a strength last year to run through the tackles. And definitely if Jacob Eason's going to be the quarterback at this position with the unproven talent at wide receiver, they're going to run the ball a ton. And the safety net as well is going to be Nyheim Hines. And I know Jonathan Taylor showed last year in this offseason that he can catch the football.
Sure.
And that's fine and dandy that you can do it. Nyheim Hines is still going to be that third down pass catcher running back. So there's a very high chance Nyheim Hines finishes pretty close to where he did last year, right around quarterback, running back, say not 15 this year. If everybody stays healthy, running back 18, 19, 20, 21, but still offers that running back 2 upside. To me, when it comes to second string, lower tier running backs, and I as a dynasty community, I personally think Nyheim Hines is the best value out there when it comes to running back 2s. A lot of people are sitting and say, no, give me Tony Pollard, give me Alexander Madison. Obviously, Kareem Hunt is in a different realm all by himself.
And he's not even a true
He finished as a running back 1 last year. But if you're looking for the best looked at as a backup running back or change of pace running back in the NFL right now, the best bang for your buck, to me, it's handily Nyheim Hines. I think he's a difference maker. I think not only that, if a running back gets hurt on your team, I think you slide him into your running back 2 position and start him on a weekly basis and actually feel pretty comfortable with that as well. There's not a lot of running backs out there in that position. J.D. McKissick, who led in targets last year, second in receptions, he worries me just a little bit because I feel like they're going to give Antonio Gibson a little bit more of a step up there in the receiving game. So besides that, I mean, San Francisco's a little bit murky out there. I don't want anything to do with Houston. So
Tampa Bay,
I think Nyheim Hines is the best bang for your buck. And I guarantee there's a lot of other running backs, guys like Tony Pollard, guys like all the Tampa Bay running backs, they're going ahead of Nyheim Hines, who not only did outproduce last year, that I believe he will outproduce when it comes to fantasy production in the 2021 season.
What are we doing with Marlon Mack?
He's coming off an Achilles injury. We're not doing anything with him.
I agree, but all reports are he looks good. All reports are that they still want to have him as part of the unit. Do we think he gets enough carries over the course of games to be a factor? Not necessarily that you want to play, but more so to be a hindrance to guys like Hines and Taylor.
You'd only hinder Taylor
because he doesn't catch the ball.
No, he only affects Taylor.
He's not really.
I think it could still affect Hines in the sense of they only use Hines in the passing game and they don't use him at all in the running game if they have 2 guys that they're willing to use between the tackles.
That would be the way. Okay, you figured it out. But it's still, I mean, Nyheim Hines still, his value is within the passing game mostly. I mean, even though he does do a good job, like Rich just described in the rushing attack, those Achilles injuries for running backs, very tricky to come back from. You said he looks good. I'll believe it when I see it. How about that?
Yeah, it's just camp reports. I mean,
exactly.
Everybody looks good
never
at camp
know.
right now. Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think Marlon
Unless
Mack
you're a Giant.
I literally think Marlon Mack is not even rosterable in my eyes. I mean, obviously, you're not going to just cut him, but I wouldn't even want him on my roster. I'm selling him to the Jonathan Taylor owner for literally anything he'll give me.
I agree with that. I don't want him on
fine
my
with that.
roster. I don't think he holds a ton of value at any point. In the rest
And
of his
right now,
career.
if anything, this is the time to sell with all this injury news. They're going to run him more. Like, hey, I know Jonathan Taylor's a little bit more, maybe a risk because they're going to have to run the ball with the offensive line. Hey, I'll give you Marlon Mack. Just give me a third. And 2023, that's fine. If I can get it. And they're like, hey, no.
I would take that all day.
And they're like, hey, no, I'll give you a fourth. I'm like, wow, you drive a hard bargain there, sir. Shake on it.
Sold.
So going to the receivers here.
I was going to chime in real quick. Using Sleeper's updated ADP for Dynasty Superflex leagues as of August 1st. Marlon Mack is RB58. Nyheim Hines is RB44.
Yeah, tremendous value. In my startup, I just got Nyheim Hines in like the 16th round, right? Like that,
Wow,
right around
that's
there.
awesome.
And I was just waiting on him, and I finally got him. I was like, why did I wait so long on Hines when I said he's a great buy? And I'll end up using him this year that late.
Sure,
So
of course you will. Yep.
ADP 44 at running backs. I guarantee this guy will finish higher than half of those other running backs that are selected ahead of him. Mentioned going to the receivers here. Paris Campbell started off with a very nice game last year where he had a decent amount of targets, decent amount of catches. Then he tore his PCL and his MCL. This is a guy who's only played in a total of 9 games in 2 years with a total of 198 career receiving yards. But he's also a receiver that we like coming out. We give a first-round rookie grade to 4.31 speed, nice route runner. Do you think this is the year that Paris Campbell can take a step forward, or is this team just doomed to be injured all year?
I mean, this is kind of one of those unfortunate, I think, side effects from the Carson Wentz injury. You know what I mean? This was a guy I was excited to see. I was hoping he was going to get his chance. And now, Jacob Eason is the guy that will likely be throwing him the ball for at least a game, but probably more likely a good chunk of the
And there is a
season.
factor in this with the first and second round pick that they would be sending to the Eagles. If Carson Wentz plays 75% of the snaps, it's a first round pick.
Right.
If he doesn't, it's a second round
So
pick.
they might be playing it real conservative with this foot injury.
I would assume so. I would be shocked to see him before week 6.
Right.
If it's even close. But at the same time, this is a team that has playoff aspirations.
It's
Super Bowl
true.
aspirations. So I don't think they'd be worrying about that too much. They feel like Carson Wentz puts them in the best position. It depends how close he is. You're right. Like if it's a game, like, okay, we'll hold him out.
Yeah, I think they're going to play it conservatively, and I don't think that will be the deciding factor. But if it's week 4 or week 5, and that would put him over the threshold.
Sure.
If it's just a week, I think so, because at the same time, they need to see him as much as they can too, because they got to decide whether he's the future of the franchise as well, or they want to get in on some of the trades out there in the NFL today.
And they can always pull him late in the season and bring Phillip Rivers in if they need to as
Yeah,
a relief pitcher.
But then he'll have 10 kids. And they need to get out of there. So what do you think of Paris Campbell? Because before, like I thought Paris Campbell was a nice low end buy with the upside he had, but as of right now, do you just think he's just a strict hold on your roster?
Yeah, I mean, if you drafted him, hey man, it sucks. The injury bug has gotten this guy early on in his career. You shouldn't sell now. You're all the way at the bottom of his value, so you don't want to do that, and you don't want to go out and buy him if you don't own him, because he's too much of a risk right now. There's better assets out there that you
I'd
should
pay a
go.
third for him.
I mean, if it's a third, then you're not really giving up much, in my opinion. So I would do that. But this is a guy that went in probably the back half of the first round or early second round in their rookie drafts. So I don't know if whoever has him is ready to throw in the towel. I wouldn't. If I gave up that draft capital, I wouldn't give him up for a third right now. I would just hold on to him, and I could manufacture a third some other place if I really needed.
It's just some people get frustrated. The guy's only played 9 games, only has under 200 yards in career receiving yards. So
I get
enough's enough.
I get why people do it. I'm just not one of those people that would
if your
jump
taxi
ship.
squad rules are the same too, like you got to bring him up on your active roster for the third year. Like this guy just came in roster. I have too many good players on my team to even worry about that.
I think the good news is there's nobody pushing for his job necessarily on this team, which helps. But I've never been the biggest Paris Campbell guy. I've always thought he's fine, but he's more of a speed guy, that a low A dot guy that'll make things happen. But I've never saw him as like this great receiver. Whereas Michael Pittman, I see as this really great receiver, and I'm nervous about him this season as well.
Yep.
We'll have to see how all of this plays out. But even if Carson Wentz does, let's say, comes back week 4 or 5. they still have to get back into a rhythm. They still have to get, like, for a young receiver, you want all of those reps with a new quarterback, as many as they can get. How long is that going to delay his development now? So it's really, this whole situation is good for nobody's value with the exception of Jacob Eason.
I feel like we're talking about the Philadelphia Eagles from last year.
It's kind of how it feels.
And it just feels like they're going down that same dumpster fire road, and it stinks.
If this opens a buy window for Michael Pittman Jr. earlier in the season because he's not producing, I'm all over that. Because I'm still
I
a
do
big
love
fan of Michael Pittman Jr. I mean, this is a guy who we really liked his tape a lot coming out of college, out of USC. And somebody who at the end of the year started coming a little bit longer and stronger. And if you remember in that postseason game that he played, he had a really good game out there.
10 catches or something?
10 targets, 5 catches, 90 yards. Almost had a touchdown, I believe, in that game as well.
Yeah.
So
made a couple big plays after the catch.
Yeah, a really talented, big, true X number 1 receiver. So if there's a dip there in your dynasty league right now where there's a possibility to buy Michael Pittman, which if I'm guessing, it's not going to be right now because people are like, oh, I don't want to overreact.
Right.
But when the season actually starts, and people got to start starting wide receivers,
of the season,
and Pittman's not producing, maybe he does produce, and then, oh, well, okay, you missed a window. But if he doesn't produce and there's a window there,
sure,
I absolutely recommend buying Michael Pittman Jr.
Yep.
Maybe even during the bye week. As the preseason starts, maybe throw an offer out there to kind of let the owner you mean business.
Yep. Absolutely.
Garrett, tell us about our friends at Prediction Strike.
Well, do we want to talk about the tight ends before we do that? No.
Garrett?
Tell us about those tight ends.
Well, here's the thing I would say about the tight ends. I mean, Jack Doyle, Mo Alley Cox. Mo Alley Cox offers the most upside. A lot of talk about Kyle Granson come out there, the rookie. A lot of talk about him looking pretty good to part. But again, I'm very cautious about all
There's
these
tight
rookies.
ends, young tight ends that look good every camp. Not saying he couldn't be the guy. And Carson Wentz will probably be looking for a tight end to throw the ball to.
He's a tight end to own. How about that? Kyle Granson's a tight end to own.
If I'm rostering somebody for the future, because I'm probably not able to start any one of these guys, he would be the one I would want to roster over the other two.
Agreed.
All right. And maybe Kyle Granson would be a good addition to your Prediction Strike squad. Yes, our friends over at Prediction Strike have one of the best apps out there on the App Store, but you can also access it on your PC. But it's the only place where you can buy, sell, even hold shares like Paris Campbell. It's the T.Y. Hilton Paris Campbell.
That's hot.
Yeah. You can buy, sell, or hold shares of your favorite players. And Granson might be a good one to look at as a potential penny stock that could pay off long term. Best of all, with the promo code Dynasty, you can receive $10 free with your first deposit of $20 or more. That's the promo code Dynasty to receive $10 free with your first deposit of $20 or more over at PredictionStrike.com.
Let's talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars. Quarterback Trevor Lawrence, first overall pick. Gardner Minshew, CJ Beathard. At running back, we have Travis Etienne, James Robinson, Carlos Hyde. Divine, or is it Dev? I can't remember. It's been so long.
Ozigbo?
Divine
Ozigbo.
Yep.
Dare Ogunbowale.
Exactly.
Wide receiver, DJ Shark, Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault, Colin Johnson, Philip Dorsett, Laquan Treadwell, Jalen Camp, Jamal Agnew. Look at those former first-round picks. Tight end, Luke Farrell, Chris Manhertz, James O'Shaughnessy, and maybe Tim Tebow.
Hey.
Starting at the top, Trevor Lawrence, one of the best dynasty prospects to come in at the quarterback position since Andrew Luck, one of the best of all time. Has all the tool sets that you're looking for from a quarterback. New head coach by Urban Meyer as well is going to come in here. I expect that they're going to use – I expect that they're going to protect Trevor Lawrence year run with the run game. I think James Robinson value has been absolutely crushed by the first round pick of Travis Etienne because I think they're going to run it. But you go into James Robinson. James Robinson had the most yards from scrimmage, 1,414 of any undrafted free agent ever last year. Finishing as running back 7 overall with an addition of 10 touchdowns. And the silver lining for owners may be that the Jaguars do run the ball a ton to help protect Lawrence, because right now in camp they're lining Travis Etienne up outside at receiver a lot.
Yeah,
and reportedly uncoverable, right?
Yeah, which
that's what they say.
Uncoverable.
So,
which is interesting.
Yep.
Listen, with Urban Meyer, this does not shock me because it's kind of somewhat devastating. Like the all diamonds in the rough finders, the Jaguars drafted the ultra explosive, ultra productive running back Travis Etienne out of Clemson in the first round as well. So they took 2 Clemson players in the first round in the NFL draft. And Etienne's somebody who's had over 1,500 yards in each of his last 3 seasons at Clemson, with over 1,600 rushing yards in both 2018 and 2019, while adding over 430 receiving yards in each of the last 2 seasons. Etienne has, like you said or mentioned, been a weapon on the outside at receiver, which could be big if they script a lot of short passes to him, as Lawrence had a lot of screens at Clemson. He threw a screen pass on 1 out of 4 or 25% of the time at Clemson, who just so happened to be his running back who he used to throw screens to. So they already have a really good rapport. And Urban Meyer is that kind of coach where he has a history of taking explosive playmakers and put them in space and setting them up for success. I mean, he did it with the likes of Curtis Samuel. Sure. He did it with Percy Harvin and many others with his time at Florida, Ohio State, and even he tried to at Bowling Green.
Here's my one issue with this, though, because we talk about guys like those guys. We compare him to Alvin Kamara, but Travis Etienne is such a different player than all those guys. And I understand the comps because of Urban Meyer, and I understand the type of role that he'll likely be in, but all of those guys made people miss. Like, they're elusive in the open field. Their lateral quickness is off the charts. Whereas Travis Etienne isn't making guys miss by his side-to-side movements. It's all about his acceleration and getting to top speed real quickly. I'm not saying that can't work. I think it could work. But it's just, it's a very different dynamic. It's not like somebody turning into a punt return. It's one play, and if the lane's there, you're not catching him. But I don't know that he's going to be making people miss in the open field like Percy Harvin was or like Curtis Samuel does. I just don't see that as at this point, a viable part of his game. So that's why all of this is puzzling to me. Could he be unguardable? Could he be uncoverable just because of his straight speed? I guess it's possible. But if there's halfway decent defensive backs out there, speed alone is not going to beat those guys. So that's why some of those reports and some of those things are puzzling to me, because he is special with his acceleration, but I don't see him being special with making people miss.
I think there's enough wiggle in his game to make people miss. I think he has the feet to make defensive backs miss and make that cut and get upfield. Again, he was very dynamic at Clemson.
He doesn't move like a wide receiver, and I think maybe that's what you were trying to say as well. Because they have to be very quick. They have to be able to sink their hips. They have to be able to change direction without losing speed, and that's not him. He is 1 foot in the ground and go. He's never going to be able to like piece together a couple moves in the open field to make people miss and then start going. That's kind of not the way he operates. That's not what I saw on tape at Clemson anyway. So I don't think that's what he's going to do in the NFL.
Who knows how he can develop?
I'll phrase it that way because I don't want to.
I'm with you though.
I don't want to cap or put a cap on a guy and say that he can't get better in any areas. But it doesn't look like that's one of his strengths anyway. So it is interesting. I do think Herb will still find ways to get him into open spaces and get him the ball in where he can be explosive. Because, I mean, Urban Meyer has played, I'm pretty sure, has played against Etienne in the past. So I'm sure he's gotten a pretty good look on him on tape before he even started digging into the pre-draft process. So I think he's probably one of these guys that Urban Meyer's just he sits up at night dreaming up ways to get these kind of guys in the open field. So I do think it will end up working. How that's going to end up kind of time sharing with James Robinson, I have no idea. I don't see these guys as 2 guys that are going to be on the field at the same time, but you never know with Herb, I guess.
They slide him out, which is weird because like Laviska Shenault was pretty good at those short intermediate passes, and he's looked good in camp so far allegedly, and he came out of a rookie season at 58 catches for 600 yards as a rookie. They also have Marvin Jones here coming off a year of 76 receptions, 978 yards and 9 touchdowns, finishes wide receiver 18 overall.
Always another sneaky old guy right there.
And they also have DJ Shark. I mean, we got to remember DJ Shark after his breakout 2019 campaign where he led the Jaguars in targets with 118, receiving yards with 1,008, and receiving touchdowns 8. Finishes wide receiver 16 despite missing 2 games with injury. I mean, his 2020 was pretty rough.
He took a step back for sure.
But then again, outside of James Robinson, the Jaguars were full of a bunch of Jags. So that wasn't crazy, right? I mean, it's not something that would knock your socks out there. I mean, dude, they tanked so badly out there in Jacksonville for Trevor Lawrence. If they're winning their first game, they lost everything. The tank was so big. I mean, like I said, I mentioned before, they could fit a whale into that thing. So it's insane out there. Do you think DJ Shark, who remember, we talk about people, everybody's having a good camp. DJ Shark is the one name you've heard that's not having a great camp.
Yeah,
people are like,
I haven't heard great things.
Yeah, you're like, he's just not having a great camp, which is not good when you hear everybody's having a great camp. So
and Herb even called him out kind of early in the year, saying that he wasn't playing physical enough, or for a big guy, he wasn't playing physical enough, and reportedly DJ Shark went out and put on some weight in order to kind of bulk up and play more physical. But it's not. I mean, he's gonna have to show it on the field, and who knows? It might be one of these odd things where it's not a great fit in this offense.
That is the tough part too. We're seeing that kind of with Denzel Mims right now, where sometimes you're the guy that comes in and you just don't quite fit the offense right. I am a little worried for DJ Chark, where he's a good player, but he just might not fit this offense. We know Darrell Bevel's going to use Marvin Jones. He played with him in Detroit,
right.
So he's going to use him. Laviska Shenault, it seems like the chess piece that Urban Meyer likes to use. He could just kind of be the odd man out. I do think that Marvin Jones, like if I was to put a sneaky bet out there where Marvin Jones ends up being like wide receiver 24, that would not shock me in the least if he ended up sneaking in there as like a low-end wide receiver.
You've been saying it for weeks on this show, saying that one of the best dynasty bargains out there right now for a contender is Marvin Jones. And after looking at the situation with the Jaguars, I do agree. I think the team leading receiver on this team will be Marvin Jones.
It's moving in that direction, and I'm a guy that likes DJ Chark, and
I do too.
So I don't like to say that, but it is moving in that direction.
So besides Travis Etienne, the best dynasty asset on here is clearly Trevor Lawrence.
Trevor Lawrence, yep.
And that's it, because this team will look probably pretty different going forward.
Anything at the tight end?
I don't think Herb has much interest in using him, right? I mean, going back to college, it wasn't like a big part of his offense. I think they'll be in there blocking. I think at times there'll be 2 of them in there blocking, and every once in a while they're going to get passes thrown. But I don't think there's ever going to be they're not going to be a focal point. They're not explosive enough, I don't think, for Herb.
Yeah, all their tight ends are the big guys. Luke Farrell, James O'Shaughnessy.
Yep.
They're just guys that
Farrell is interesting a little bit as like an old Ohio State guy
who didn't do anything at Ohio State.
But anytime you get a coach team up with a former player that they just drafted, it's enough to think about.
I think he knows what
the system.
I think he knows what Herb expects, and he'll be able to do what Herb wants from the tight end.
And for Laviska, I just view him as like a Sterling Shepard. Like nobody who's ever going to be like, maybe finishes wide receiver here in 3, like a year, maybe 2 of his career, but like nobody that's overvaluable to me in my eyes. If he's a hot name in the community coming out of training camp, I'm selling personally, because I didn't love his tape coming out of Colorado. So that was just me.
I find him a little bit more interesting now that he's settled in and kind of played a season without a bunch of injuries, because that was my biggest concern with him. Was he played too physical and he got himself beat up too much, but he seemed to make it through year 1 pretty healthy. I don't remember there being like any major. There was like a little thing right at the beginning of the season with him.
Yeah, but he ended up being fine for most of the year.
Right. So I wouldn't mind seeing how he fits into this offense.
I think I'm closer to where you're at on Viska. I'm curious as well. I have an eyebrow raised.
Yep.
All right, let's move on. A short and sweet team here. So the worst team in the NFL, the Houston Texans, quarterback temporarily by Deshaun Watson, who wasn't even on the field today with the first day of pads.
First day of pads.
Tyrod Taylor, who's probably the likely starting quarterback. And then Davis Mills, who, from what I hear coming out of camp, he has more balls hitting the ground than he does wide receivers' hands. At running backs, you have David Johnson, Mark Ingram, Phillip Lindsay, Rex Burkhead, Dontrell Hilliard. At wide receiver, Brandon Cooks, Kiki Kuti, Anthony Miller, who they just traded for, Nico Collins, Andre Roberts, Isaiah Coulter, Chris Conley. At tight end, Pharaoh Brown, Jordan Akins, and Kahali Warren. This is a dynasty team's worst nightmare. All old players that just aren't any good.
2017, that running back backfield is fire.
Wow. Your best fantasy options are David Johnson and Brandon Cooks, who should be favored to goggle up all that garbage time attempts at the comebacks of the team.
Brandon Cooks is legitimately interesting to me.
Yeah.
Just on pure targets alone. And
They'll
then
be trailing all the time.
And then Nico Collins as like an upside play.
Oh, I like Nico Collins.
And then I'm basically out on everything else.
Yeah, let's be clear. I want Nico Collins.
Nico Collins, sure. I concur.
You're not even in on Brandon Cooks.
I concur.
I mean, dude, the running back room alone might as well be a Medicare committee because they're all old. I mean, David Johnson's still a name that's living off his one running back season. But, I mean, to be fair, now I'm going to be fair because I've talked a lot of shit about David Johnson, a lot. To be fair, he did average 4.7 yards per carry last year, his best ever. And he finished as running back 21. Johnson had 1,005 yards, 8 touchdowns in 12 games.
And he didn't look like he was running in sand last year like he did the year before.
Which helps.
So there's that.
I mean, Mark Ingram looks washed, and Rex Burkhead might as well be a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
He actually had a nice little highlight today where he totally made a guy miss, which was kind of surprising. Mark Ingram did.
Because he's super fresh. It's like the first day of camp.
Yeah,
tired yet.
He's the name that I would absolutely like throw a 5th round pick out there for just to like get him on my roster because David Coley, that was their first signing, and he came from Baltimore with Mark Ingram. Like he would be a sneaky guy that at the end of the year, like he put up David Johnson numbers from last year where you're like, what? He put up 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns? That's weird.
I think the best thing going for this bingo playing group is David Johnson because why? It's just David Johnson.
And you're probably going to pick Philip Lindsay, aren't you?
No, I don't want any of these guys. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I mean, David Johnson he's the best.
Do I have to choose one of them?
He's the best pass catcher running back here. So that's what I'm looking at. I'm just looking at who's the best PPR option. It's going to be David Johnson on third downs. They're going to have a lot of third downs. They're going to be trailing a ton.
Lots of third downs.
He's going to be under there because none of these guys are the future. Not a single one of these running backs is under contract after this season. So whatever they have now, that's it. They're going to be gone. They're having somebody new next year.
I mean, I have a list here that basically shows when they can get out of the contracts. And the column was almost all filled with now or after 2021. The whole team is going to be different after this year. It's ridiculous.
It's going to be gone. We have a lot of draft capital after trading Deshaun Watson.
Exactly.
Potentially 3 first-round picks from Philadelphia.
Like I mean, there's a reason they need 3 first-round picks. I mean, they're completely devoid, first of all, and the money that they're going to have to be gobbling up from that contract that Deshaun Watson has is ridiculous. So they have to.
Yeah, they just signed him last
offseason.
Offseason.
So they have to make some hay on Deshaun Watson. That's why they're holding out for these supposed 3 first-round draft picks. I mean, I have no idea if that's what they're actually going to get.
I think the only reason he hasn't been dealt is because of all the sexual allegation stuff. And I think if and hopefully when that gets cleared up, because I'm hoping that it's not true, and if that's the case, then I think as soon as that's cleared up, then teams will be right in to grab him. But I think right now they're not willing to pay full price for him if there's some sort of red flag.
Absolutely.
He's not a commissioner exempt list yet, so that's good news for him at least. But right now the newest additions right here are the young receivers that you have possibly get it. I mean, we mentioned I like Nico Collins. This was a guy, which was weird because this team has no draft capital. They traded up in the 3rd round to get him. So
I hope he hits for their sake.
Him, Isaiah Coulter is a nice prospect. Kiki Kuti has shown flashes. And, of course, they have rookie tight end Brevin Jordan, who's super athletic with mediocre hands.
Yep.
But Nico at 6'4", I mean, he offers your best red zone threat option here. We mentioned Brandon Cooks is the best fantasy option here going forward for this year and probably going forward because Brandon Cooks was wide receiver 17 in 2020 at 81 receptions for 1,150 yards and 6 touchdowns. In 2019, the year before, was honestly his only bad year. His 15 points per game was good for 15th best. That was for
who was throwing else. Brandon Cooks the ball last year?
Deshaun Watson.
Who's going to be throwing him the ball this year?
Not Deshaun Watson.
No. But he's had over 1,000 yards in 5 of 6 seasons.
I'm passing.
The thing about Cooks is he does have game-breaking speed. Like on any play, he could take it to the house. And that's what you're hoping for is that he gets 10 targets a game, he catches half of them, and one of those plays is a decently large gain.
There he goes. He nails it.
I'll let you ride that roller coaster, sir. I'm done.
Yeah, so, I mean, for the Jags, dynasty options, it's Nico Collins. And then for this year, Brandon Cooks might be some pretty cheap value at wide receiver.
He's going to be your wide receiver 3 that at times will outperform that, but there'll be times where you're disappointed.
Let's end it on this.
I agree.
Tell me where Deshaun Watson is playing week 1, Garrett.
I think of this year?
Yeah.
I think he's still in Houston week 1.
Okay.
I don't think the stuff's cleared up.
Where does he get traded to here this year?
When he gets traded, I'm leaning towards Philadelphia.
Matt?
I'm going to go like curveball Oakland.
Oh, okay.
They just decide to go in a crazy different direction.
I could actually see that. I don't think that's that wild.
Everything I'm seeing through the grapevine on the Twitter people that I trust, it's all leading back towards Philadelphia. They're the only team. The reason they acquired all those first round picks, again, this Carson Wentz trade might mess that up a little bit. Mm-hmm. The whole reason they acquired all these 3 first round picks for next year is to move Jalen Hurts and the 3 first round picks for Deshaun Watson.
Another one that could end up being a little crazy and wild, but we'll have to see how he does in Detroit. But I think Detroit could be another landing spot that could be interesting for him.
Because they got the multiple first round picks.
Yep.
Miami, anybody?
They got all those first round picks.
No, they're committed to Tua.
It's training camp, but
Sure.
Everything points to him looking really good so far in camp.
And a lot of connection.
I've bought in big time to Tua. I've made some big trades to acquire him. It's off season, so I'm aboard the Tua train.
All right, and we didn't touch on the Randall Cobb getting moved to Green Bay, right? Because did we miss that?
He gone. That's true. It happened in between when we covered those teams.
He's 31 years old. And he hasn't been relevant since like 2017. So
I just wanted to mention it.
That's it. We'll be back. We have one more division, 2 more divisions to break down: AFC and NFC North. We saved the best for last. We'll see you next week, Nerd Herd.
Adios.